In the heart of a sleepy Midwestern town where church steeples pierced the sky like judgmental fingers, Sarah Thompson slammed her fist on the kitchen table, her voice echoing through the modest ranch-style home. "Those people are ruining this country," she declared to her bridge club friends, her eyes flashing with what seemed like genuine disdain as she railed against the latest pride parade on the news. But as her son, Rogue, eavesdropped from the hallway, his heart twisted. He knew her words were a shield, a desperate act to protect him from the very community that raised them both. Rogue Thompson had always felt like an outsider in Elmwood, Illinois, a place where Friday nights meant high school football and Sundays were reserved for Pastor Reynolds' fiery sermons at First Baptist Church. At 22, fresh out of community college with a degree in graphic design, Rogue had returned home to figure out his next steps, but the weight of his secret pressed heavier than ever. He'd known he was gay since middle school, stealing glances at boys in gym class while pretending to crush on the cheerleaders. His mother, Sarah, a widowed elementary school teacher, had been his rock after his father's death in a car accident when Rogue was 10. She volunteered at the church, baked pies for potlucks, and quoted Bible verses with ease. Yet, one rainy afternoon 2 years ago, she'd walked in on him kissing his high school friend, Jake, in the basement. Instead of outrage, her face had crumpled into fear. "You can't tell anyone," she'd whispered, pulling him into a hug. "Not here. The church. They wouldn't understand." From that day, Sarah's public persona shifted. She joined the church's Family Values Committee, speaking out against LGBTQ rights at town hall meetings, all while whispering affirmations to Rogue in private. "I love you just as you are," she'd say, her voice soft in the dead of night. But the act took its toll. Rogue watched her age overnight, lines etching her face as she balanced her deception. He resented it sometimes. Why couldn't she just stand up for him? But deep down, he knew the risks. Pastor Reynolds had preached about saving souls from sin, and rumors swirled about families shunned, kids sent to conversion camps. Elmwood wasn't San Francisco. It was a place where conformity was currency. Enter Ryan Patel, the new barista at the local coffee shop. Grounds for hope. Ryan, 24, had moved from Chicago after a messy breakup, seeking a quieter life. With his warm brown eyes, easy smile, and a sleeve of tattoos peeking from his apron, he caught Rogue's attention on his first visit. "What can I get you?" Ryan asked, his voice like smooth caramel. Rogue stammered his order, a simple latte, but their fingers brushed as he handed over the cash, sending a spark up his arm. Over the next weeks, their interactions grew from small talk to lingering conversations. Ryan shared stories of his Indian American family, how they'd accepted his coming out with open arms, albeit after some initial shock. "My mom made me promise to find someone who makes me laugh," Ryan said one afternoon, leaning over the counter. Rogue chuckled, feeling a warmth he hadn't known possible in Elmwood. But as their connection deepened, so did the conflicts. Rogue invited Ryan to a casual hike in the nearby state park, their first real date. Under the canopy of oaks, they talked for hours, about dreams, fears, the future. Ryan leaned in, their lips meeting in a tentative kiss that felt like coming home. "I've never felt this way," Rogue admitted later, as they sat on a log overlooking a stream. Ryan squeezed his hand. "Me neither. But what's with the secrecy? You act like we're in a spy movie." Rogue hesitated, glancing around as if the trees had ears. "It's complicated. My mom, the town. It's not safe." Sarah noticed the change in Rogue immediately, the glow in his eyes, the extra spring in his step. One evening, as he helped her with dinner, she cornered him. "Who's the boy?" she asked quietly. Rogue froze, knife hovering over the carrots. "How did you?" she smiled sadly. "A mother knows. But Rogue, you have to be careful. If the church finds out." Her voice trailed off, but the implication hung heavy. That night, at the church committee meeting, Sarah doubled down on her rhetoric, proposing a petition against the school's upcoming diversity workshop. "We can't let this agenda corrupt our children," she said, her words tasting like ash. The group applauded, but inside, she ached for her son. As weeks turned to months, Rogue and Ryan's relationship blossomed in stolen moments. Late-night drives, picnics in hidden meadows. Ryan pushed for more openness. "I want to meet your mom properly," he said one day, frustration creeping in. "Hiding like this, it's not healthy." Rogue nodded, but fear gnawed at him. What if Sarah's facade cracked? What if the town turned on them? The first crack came at the annual church picnic. Rogue had convinced Ryan to come as a friend, but their easy camaraderie drew eyes. Mrs. Hargrove, the town gossip, sidled up to Sarah. "Your boy seems close with that new fellow. Hope he's not, you know." Sarah forced a laugh. "Oh, please. Rogue knows better." But her heart raced. The tension built when Pastor Reynolds announced a sermon series on biblical family structures. Flyers plastered the town, warning against modern temptations. Rogue felt the noose tightening. He confronted Sarah that night. "Why do you keep doing this? Pretending to hate people like me?" Tears welled in her eyes. "To protect you, honey. Remember what happened to the miller's son? They sent him away and he didn't come back the same." Rogue stormed out, seeking solace with Ryan. "She loves me, but her fear is killing us," he confessed. Ryan held him. "Maybe it's time to face it together." Little did they know the storm was just beginning. Whispers spread, fueled by a misinterpreted photo on social media. Rogue and Ryan at the coffee shop, heads close. The church elders called a meeting, and Sarah found herself at the center, her carefully constructed wall starting to crumble. The whispers turned to outright accusations faster than Rogue could have imagined. It started with a phone call from Pastor Reynolds to Sarah, his voice dripping with false concern. "We've heard some troubling rumors about your son, Sister Thompson. We want to help guide him back to the path." Sarah's hand trembled on the receiver as she assured him it was all a misunderstanding. But the seed of doubt had been planted. That evening, she sat Rogue down in the living room, the same spot where they'd shared so many happy memories. Board games, holiday decorations, quiet talks about his father. Now it felt like a courtroom. "They're watching us," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You need to end things with Ryan, at least for now." Rogue's face flushed with anger. "End it? Mom, I love him. This isn't some phase." The word love hung in the air, heavy and real. Sarah's eyes softened. "I know, sweetheart, but the church, they've ruined lives. Your father and I grew up here. We saw what happens when you don't fit in." She recounted stories Rogue had heard fragments of before. The boy in the 80s sent to electroshock therapy, the family ostracized until they moved away. "I'm not hating. I'm surviving for both of us." Rogue couldn't sleep that night, tossing in his childhood bed, posters of bands and artists still taped to the walls. Ryan texted him, "Everything okay? You seemed off today." Rogue replied with a vague assurance, but the guilt ate at him. The next day he met Ryan at a diner outside town, away from prying eyes. "My mom's scared," he explained. "The church is pressuring her." Ryan's brow furrowed. "Scared of what? We're adults. This isn't the Dark Ages." But Rogue knew better. In Elmwood, tradition was a weapon. Ryan suggested coming out publicly, maybe at a town event, to force acceptance. "Hiding gives them power," he argued. Rogue wavered, torn between love and loyalty. Meanwhile, Sarah's internal conflict raged. At work, she overheard colleagues discussing the gay agenda infiltrating schools, echoing her own public stance. But in her classroom, she taught kindness and empathy, contradictions piling up like unpaid bills. One afternoon, she confided in her oldest friend, Martha, over tea. Martha, a fellow churchgoer, listened as Sarah skirted the truth. "What if it was your child?" Sarah asked hypothetically. Martha's response chilled her. "I'd pray for them, but sin is sin. Sometimes tough love is needed." Sarah nodded outwardly, but inside, resolve hardened. She couldn't let that happen to Rogue. The turning point came during a heated town council meeting about adding LGBTQ protections to local ordinances. Sarah, as committee head, spoke against it, citing traditional values. But as she scanned the room, She spotted Rogue in the back, Ryan by his side, their presence a silent protest. Her words faltered for a split second, but she powered through. Afterward, Rogue confronted her in the parking lot. "How can you say those things knowing it's about me?" Tears streamed down Sarah's face. "Because if I don't, they'll come after you. I've seen the petitions, the plans for interventions. I'm buying time until you can leave this town." Ryan, witnessing the exchange, pulled Rogue aside later. "Your mom's not the enemy. The system is. But we can't live like this forever." Inspired, Rogue began researching online forums about queer life in conservative areas, stories of families torn apart or reconciled. He discovered a support group in a nearby city, but attending meant risking exposure. Sarah, sensing his restlessness, left pamphlets about safer cities on his desk, subtle hints of her true support. "Chicago's nice," she said casually one morning. Rogue smiled faintly, a bridge forming. But the conflicts escalated when Pastor Reynolds visited their home unannounced. "We care about Rogue," he said, sitting stiffly on the couch. "If there's confusion, we have programs." Sarah's pulse raced as she deflected, offering coffee and platitudes. Rogue, hiding upstairs, listened in horror. After the pastor left, mother and son argued fiercely. "Programs? Like brainwashing?" Rogue yelled. Sarah broke down. "I joined the committee to steer them away from families like ours. I've watered down their proposals, delayed actions. It's all for you." The revelation stunned Rogue. All this time, her hatred was a performance, a strategic infiltration. But the toll was evident. Sarah's health declining, stress-induced migraines plaguing her. Ryan, learning this, urged unity. "Let's talk to her together." They did, over a tense dinner where truth spilled like wine. Sarah admitted her fears rooted in her own youth. A gay uncle disowned by the family, dying alone. "I won't let that be you," she vowed. Rogue hugged her, forgiveness budding. Yet external pressures mounted. A church member, suspecting Sarah's duplicity, started digging old social media posts, overheard conversations. Whispers of hypocrisy spread. At a Sunday service, Pastor Reynolds preached directly at her. "Even the faithful can stray." Sarah felt the walls closing in. Rogue, seeing her pain, decided action was needed. With Ryan's help, he planned a quiet move to Chicago, job applications in motion. But before they could escape, a bombshell dropped. An anonymous letter to the church accusing Rogue outright, with photos attached. The family reeled, Sarah's facade cracking publicly for the first time. The anonymous letter ignited a firestorm in Elmwood, transforming quiet suspicions into open confrontation. Pastor Reynolds called an emergency meeting of the elders, and Sarah was summoned like a defendant to trial. Sitting in the church basement, surrounded by stern faces she'd known for decades, she clutched her Bible like a lifeline. "These allegations about your son, and your possible complicity," the pastor intoned. Sarah denied everything at first, her voice steady from years of practice. But inside, panic surged. Who had sent it? Mrs. Hargrove? A jealous neighbor? The photos were grainy, Rogue and Ryan at the park, nothing explicit but damning in this context. Word spread like wildfire through the town. At the grocery store, Sarah felt eyes boring into her back. Whispers followed. "I always knew something was off with that boy." Her bridge club canceled their weekly game, excuses thin as tissue paper. Rogue, meanwhile, faced his own backlash. At the coffee shop, customers avoided Ryan's counter when Rogue visited, murmurs of unnatural floating in the air. Ryan's boss, a church deacon, pulled him aside. "This could hurt business. Keep it professional." Ryan bristled. Professional or hidden? The tension strained their relationship. Arguments flared over strategy. "We should fight back," Ryan insisted. "Go public, rally support." Rogue shook his head. "You don't get it. This town eats its own." Sarah's emotional turmoil peaked during a solitary walk in the woods behind their house. Memories flooded her. Rogue as a toddler, giggling in her arms. His father's funeral, where the church had been her only support. How had protection turned to poison? She returned home to find Rogue packing boxes. "I'm leaving," he said flatly. "With Ryan. We can't stay." Sarah's heart shattered. "But this is your home." Rogue paused, eyes glistening. "Not if it means losing myself or you." They talked deep into the night, Sarah revealing more layers of her deception. "I donated anonymously to LGBTQ charities, lobbied quietly against harsh policies. It was never hate. It was camouflage." Inspired by her confessions, Rogue suggested a family meeting with Ryan. Over pizza in the kitchen, barriers crumbled. Ryan shared his own story, coming out to conservative relatives, the initial rejection turning to acceptance through persistence. "Maybe the church can change too," he offered. Sarah scoffed at first, but seeds of doubt planted. Change? They've been this way forever. Yet, she agreed to attend a support group with them in the city, a first step toward authenticity. But society pushed back harder. The church officially counseled Sarah to step down from her committee role, citing conflicts of interest. At school, parents complained about her teaching their kids, fearing influence. One evening, a rock shattered their front window, a note attached, "Sinners out." Rogue rushed downstairs, Ryan on the phone with police. Sarah stared at the shards, resolve hardening. "No more hiding," she declared. For the first time, she skipped church that Sunday, instead joining Rogue and Ryan for brunch in a neighboring town. Laughter flowed, a glimpse of freedom. The high drama unfolded at the annual town fair, where booths lined the streets and families gathered. Pastor Reynolds had a stage for his values speech. Sarah, uninvited but undeterred, approached him beforehand. "My son is gay, and I love him," she said quietly. The pastor's eyes widened. "Sarah, think of your soul." She shook her head. "My soul is with my family." Word leaked, and during the speech, hecklers emerged. Some supportive, others hostile. Rogue and Ryan stood in the crowd, holding hands publicly for the first time. Shouts erupted, "Abomination," countered by "Love is love." The fair devolved into chaos, police intervening as arguments turned physical. Sarah found herself defending Rogue to old friends, her voice strong. "If the church can't accept him, then it's not God's house." The fallout was swift. Excommunication threats, social isolation. But allies emerged. A young couple from church, a teacher colleague, who whispered support. Ryan's family called, offering refuge in Chicago. As the family packed, emotions swirled. Relief, grief, anger. In a poignant moment, Sarah gifted Rogue his father's watch. "He'd be proud of you," she said. Rogue hugged her tightly. "And of you, for finally standing up." They drove away from Elmwood under a setting sun, the town shrinking in the rearview. But questions lingered. Had Sarah's pretense saved them, or prolonged the pain? In Chicago, they settled into a small apartment, Sarah finding work at a progressive school. Rogue and Ryan's bond strengthened, free from shadows. Yet the past haunted. News reached them of church reforms, subtle shifts prompted by the scandal. Sarah wondered if her actions had sparked change. Rogue, thriving in his new job, reflected on choices made. The climax loomed when Pastor Reynolds emailed Sarah, seeking dialogue. "Perhaps I was wrong," he admitted. She debated responding, weighing forgiveness against justice. Settling into Chicago brought a whirlwind of adjustments for the Thompson family, now expanded to include Ryan as more than just Rogue's partner. The city's vibrant energy, bustling streets, diverse neighborhoods, pride flags waving unapologetically, felt like a balm after Elmwood's suffocation. Sarah rented a cozy two-bedroom in Lincoln Park, close to Rogue and Ryan's studio. She threw herself into her new role teaching at a public school that celebrated inclusivity, leading workshops on empathy she once only dreamed of. "It's like breathing fresh air," she told Rogue over coffee one morning, her face brighter than he'd seen in years. Rogue flourished in a graphic design firm, his creativity unleashed without fear. Ryan, transferring to a downtown cafe, pursued night classes in social work, inspired by their ordeal. Their relationship deepened through everyday normalcy, grocery shopping hand in hand, movie nights curled on the couch. But scars remained. Rogue sometimes woke from nightmares of church bells tolling judgment. "Do you regret not fighting harder sooner?" Ryan asked one evening. Rogue pondered. "Mom did what she thought was best. But yeah, sometimes." Sarah's internal battles persisted. She attended therapy, unpacking decades of conditioned guilt. "I pretended to hate to protect, but did I hurt him more?" she confided to her counselor. The answer wasn't simple. It was a tapestry of love, fear, and societal pressure. Back in Elmwood, ripples continued. Friends reported the church splitting, progressives forming a new congregation, citing Sarah's stand as catalyst. Pastor Reynolds, facing backlash, softened his sermons, inviting guest speakers on compassion. Sarah received letters from former members. "You opened my eyes." Validation mixed with bitterness. Why did it take her family's pain? Conflicts arose anew when Rogue's cousin, Emily, visited from Elmwood. Still tied to the church, she arrived wide-eyed at the city's openness. Over dinner, tensions simmered. "Aunt Sarah, how could you abandon your faith?" Emily asked. Sarah met her gaze. "I didn't abandon faith. I rejected hate disguised as it." Rogue chimed in. "The Bible says love thy neighbor, not judge them." Emily left conflicted, promising to think. It sparked debate among them. Was reconciliation possible, or was distance safer? Ryan's family provided contrast. At a Diwali celebration, his parents welcomed Sarah and Rogue warmly, sharing stories of their own cultural clashes with acceptance. "It wasn't easy, but family first," his mother said, hugging Sarah. Inspired, Sarah reached out to her estranged sister, who had shunned their gay uncle years ago. The call was awkward, tears flowing as old wounds reopened. "I was wrong," her sister admitted. Healing began, fragile but real. But not all was smooth. A viral article about their story, mother's deception, hiding her gay son from church, brought unwanted attention. Reporters called, activists praised, conservatives condemned. Rogue fielded interviews, his voice steady. "My mom's actions were controversial, but rooted in love." Social media exploded with opinions. Heroine versus enabler of bigotry. The family debated ethics late into nights. Was lying justified? Ryan posed. Sarah defended. "In a system that harms, yes." Rogue wavered. "But it delayed our freedom." The drama peaked at a panel discussion in Chicago on faith and LGBTQ rights. Sarah was invited to speak, alongside Pastor Reynolds, who had traveled for it. The auditorium buzzed with anticipation. Sarah took the stage, heart pounding. "I feigned hatred to shield my son, but in doing so, I perpetuated the very system I feared." Reynolds responded, "We failed you, Sarah. Change starts with admission." Questions flew. Is deception ever moral? Audience members shared stories, some supportive, others accusatory. Rogue and Ryan watched from the front row, pride swelling. Post-event, a private conversation unfolded. Reynolds apologized. "I preached fear, not love." Sarah forgave, but firmly, actions matter more than words. They parted with tentative hope. Back home, the family reflected. "Maybe good came from it," Rogue said. Sarah nodded. "But at what cost?" As months passed, normalcy settled. Rogue proposed to Ryan on a lakeside walk, ring glinting in the sun. Sarah cried tears of joy, planning the wedding with gusto. Invites went to Elmwood allies. A bridge extended. The ceremony, simple and heartfelt, symbolized triumph. Vows exchanged under a canopy of acceptance. Yet, lingering questions haunted. Had Sarah's pretense been a necessary evil, or a missed opportunity for earlier change? In quiet moments, they pondered the gray areas of morality in a divided society. The wedding day dawned bright in Chicago, a crisp autumn morning where leaves painted the city in golds and reds. Rogue stood at the altar in a tailored suit, nerves buzzing as guests filled the intimate venue, a renovated warehouse with exposed bricks and string lights. Ryan approached, beaming in his Sherwani-inspired attire, blending cultures seamlessly. Sarah, in a flowing blue dress, walked Rogue down the aisle, her arm linked with his. "I'm so proud," she whispered. The officiant, a queer minister, spoke of love's resilience amid adversity. Vows exchanged, rings slipped on, applause erupted. In that moment, Elmwood felt worlds away. Post-ceremony, the reception hummed with laughter, toasts from Ryan's family, dances with old friends. Even Emily attended, her presence a small victory. "This is beautiful," she admitted to Sarah. "Maybe I was wrong." Sarah smiled. "We all learn." But beneath the joy, undercurrents of past conflicts simmered. A distant relative from Elmwood cornered Rogue. "Your mom's act. Was it right?" Rogue paused. "It saved me, but hurt too. Life's not black and white." In the following years, their story inspired others. Sarah wrote a memoir, Veils of Protection, detailing her journey. It sparked debates nationwide, book clubs dissecting ethics, podcasts analyzing societal pressures. Critics called her a hypocrite, supporters a hero. Rogue and Ryan adopted a child, a baby girl named Hope, navigating parenthood with the same fierce love Sarah had shown. Family dinners became rituals, stories shared to educate Hope about her heritage. Back in Elmwood, change crept in. The new progressive church thrived, Pastor Reynolds retiring amid reflection. Sarah visited occasionally, mending fences. One trip, she spoke at her old school, advocating for inclusivity. Students listened rapt, one confiding, "I'm gay too. Your story gives me hope." Tears welled, her deception's ripple effects evident. But personal tolls lingered. Sarah battled regret in quiet hours. Did I rob Rogue of authenticity? Therapy helped, but doubts persisted. Rogue, thriving, occasionally felt resentment flare. Why not fight openly from the start? Ryan mediated. She did what she could in her world. Their bond, tested and true, held firm. The narrative's most contentious element emerged in public forums. A documentary featured their tale, interviewing all sides. Viewers debated. Mothers lie? Protective or problematic? Social media polls split evenly. At a screening Q&A, Sarah faced a pointed question. Would you do it again? She hesitated. Yes, to keep him safe. But I'd push for change sooner. As time passed, hope grew, asking questions about Grandma's secret. Sarah explained gently. Sometimes, to protect love, we wear masks. Hope nodded, wise beyond years. Rogue watched, heart full, pondering legacies. The family's journey underscored broader societal clashes. Faith versus identity, tradition versus progress. In America, where divides deepened, their story prompted reflection. How far should one go to shield loved ones from intolerance? In the end, as Sarah aged gracefully, surrounded by family, one question remained to spark endless debate. Was a mother's deception in the face of bigotry ultimately right or wrong?